Hello, and welcome to another in our series of Gems of the Alshich Kodesh. And this week's Seder is the Seder of Balak. It's chapter 22 in the book of Bamidbar, if you like chapters. It starts in verse 2, which means that the real story starts at the end of the previous Seder. At the end of the previous Seder, and which we talked about last week, the Jewish people are very near completion of their journey to enter the land of Israel. They still have a couple of challenges, geographic and otherwise. And they try to go through the land of Sichon, and he refuses to let them go through, to travel through his land, comes out with his army to destroy the Jewish people, and both Sichon and Og, two kings situated very near the land of Israel, fight the Jewish people and fail absolutely miserably. Well, they're going to fail miserably if you're fighting against God, well, an army or a people with God and on their side after all. And then they come to the land of Moab. Now these two people had already fought, had already protected the land of Moab, and indeed had fought against the Moabites, taking some of their land. However, we now come to the reaction of the Moabites when a powerful army who have proven their worth on the battlefield confronts them, what the reactions are. So that's where the story begins. And let's read. Again, we're looking for using Mr. Alshich, Rabbi Hartscroll. Vayara Balak ben Zippor. And Balak, who was the son of a fellow called Zippor, had seen Eskol Asher also Yisrael Emori. Everything that the Jews had done when they fought the Amorites, one of these nations they just vanquished. Vayagav Moab mipnei ha'am. And the Moabites, he's the king of the Moabites, are terrified, very much Kirafu, because there's so many Jews. But Yokat's Moab mibnei b'nei Yisrael, and they are sick afraid usually. So afraid they're sick because of b'nei Yisrael. So this is very interesting. Balak is the king of the Moabites, but Rashi says he was only the king at that time. They appointed him as an emergency measure because he'd already seen and fought against the Jews and lost, but at least he knew our techniques and our battlecraft, if you want to call it that. And therefore he was a temporary acquisition, a temporary king. And so it says, Vayar Balak, so Balak saw what the Jews had done before. The next verse says, Vayogar Moab, the people of Moab are terrified because of the people, because they're very, 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 very large in number. The Yokots Moab b'nei Israel, and they're Yokots, sick because of the b'nei Israel. Two different designations for the Jewish people. The people see the Jewish people are referred to as the people, Ha'am, and also they're scared of them, and but they're terrified of the b'nei Israel. But Yomer Moab el Zikni Midian, so Moab says to the elders of Midian, Ati lachucha kol is called they're going to destroy us. So they turn and look for an alliance with another people, and they turn to Midian, to the Midianites, and say they're going to destroy us. So let's have an alliance against them. But Yishlach Malachim el Bilam. But that's their reaction. They look for a military alliance. But Balak ben Zippor melech l'Moab ba'Isahi vayishlach malachim el Bilam, and he sends emissaries to Bilam. Who was Bilam? So again, let's just paint that picture again. Jewish people come towards the border of Moab, fight against two nations, beat them. The Moabites are terrified because they're facing two aspects of the Jewish people which terrorize them. One is referred to as the people, lots of Jews. Second of all, they're B'nai Yisrael, sons of Israel, a particular type of people, a holy people, one with God on their side. So what's the reaction? So it's interesting. Their reaction is that they send emissaries to another nation to try and build a military alliance so they can counterbalance the numerical superiority of the Jews. It would seem a reasonable response. But their king, the king of Moab, a temporary appointment, who'd previously fought against the Jews, that's not his reaction at all. He sends to a guy called Bilam. Now, Bilam, we say, famous, it's in our prayers, nobody was as great as Moses. And the rabbis point out, there was nobody as great amongst the Jewish people as Moses, but in the non-Jewish world, there was somebody who was the equivalent of Moses, and that was Balaam. Balaam was incredibly powerful. He was a prophet. He had insights. He was, I think the American phrase would be a scary dude. And he was intimidating and threatening to the Jewish people. And that's what the king Balak wants. Because you see, he's been there. He's seen with his own eyes the way the Jews fight, and they do fight miraculously. They do have God on their side. So therefore you need to undo that, and for that you're going to need somebody who knows how to fight, as it were, against God, or at least use God to become your ally and disconnect him from the Jewish people, which is precisely what his strategy is going to be. But in this story, the Alshich says, quoting the Talmud as a famous saying, Ein dome shmiya ri'ya. You can't compare what you hear about to what you see with your own eyes. The Moabites had heard the Jews fought miraculously, but what they saw with their own eyes was a massive, massive multitude of people, huge numbers, which dwarfed their numerical resources. And as a consequence, that's what they saw with their own eyes. That's what they were scared about. That's what they react to. And their tactic is, let's go and forge an alliance with people who can rebalance the scales here. We'll have as many soldiers on our side as there, because that's what they saw with their own eyes. They'd heard about Bnei Yisrael. They'd heard that they fought miraculously, but that's not what they saw. And therefore, it doesn't make the same impact. But Balak, he'd been there, he'd seen with his own eyes how the Jews fight. That's the one that impacts most on him. So he looks for somebody who could fight in the same way, supernaturally, if you want to call it that, pressing the buttons that which, as it were, would get God to react positively to his petition to save the Moabites from the Jews. Of course, the irony was the Moabites weren't threatened at all by the Jews. The Jews were told by God not to touch them, because in the future somebody very special is going to come from the Moabites, and of course that's Ruth, who's going to be the grandmother of Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu, who's going to be the great going on through generations, millennia, the great grandmother of the Mashiach. So the Moabites were actually completely secure, but okay, that's not how anti-Semites see Jews. Jews are always a threat. But here's a very important idea. It's what you see with your eyes is far more impactful than what you hear about. Ein dome shmiya l'ri'ya. What you see. So if you want to impact Jews and make sure that they remain Jews, they've got to see it. And I once heard from a wonderful educator in Manchester, now lives in Yerushalayim. I think it's called Lipa Rabinowitz, by the way. He once said an incredible thing. The Jewish people came to Mount Sinai at the beginning of our story, and it says, and they saw the sounds. So there's thunder and lightning and all the dramatic effects, but it says they saw the sound. You don't normally see a sound. So many commentators say there that because they were saying things prophetically, then the normal laws of physics, which we mentioned last week, don't really apply. You see sounds. But he said something which is a little bit more practical, if that's the right word. He said, you can have the greatest educator for your child in the world. You can send your child to the greatest schools, the greatest Jewish schools in the world, because you want them to be convinced, you want them to be inculcated with Jewish ideas and Jewish philosophy and Torah and mitzvahs. However, if they don't see the sounds, if when they come back home, they don't see their parents practicing the sounds, the ideas, the words, the ideals they've heard in school, it's not going to go in. You've got to see the sounds. The parents have to live, embody what they're trying to convey to the child. You've got to live it and demonstrate it and be a paradigm for it. Seeing is the crucial factor here. It's what they saw that impacted the Moabites. It's what Balak saw that impacted him. It's what we see and what we let our children see that's going to impact them too.